welcome to the show. I am your host, Christine Marie. Y'all, I am really, really, really grateful for the conversation we're about to have today in the green room. Fyfe Barraclough, who is joining me today, we were just chatting around his business, and after looking at his website and doing some recon on who he is and the transformation he makes in trades owners and operators. Y'all, there's actually a testimonial I wanted to read. He's a coach that works specifically with owners and operators in the trades. And he really has a proprietary process that he takes them through to radically transform their lives. Fyfe, is that fair?
I'm a little humble, so that feels a little heavy and big, but yeah, it's I get a chance to work with some awesome people and help them in a lot of different ways.
Really, really cool stuff. And I'll read this quote testimonial from somebody, and then you listeners can decide whether you think it's radical transformation or not. I think it's radical. This is a gentleman who wrote this on his website. He is the CEO and founder of Pedigree Painting. He says, prior to working with Fyfe, I felt guilty if I was working in the business, and I felt guilty when I was at home. I couldn't win. I was constantly playing loops in my head. I felt like I was never present at home or at work, and nobody was getting the best of me. I felt like I was getting starved of oxygen. I had a hard time making executive decisions, and I knew I needed something different from all the self-development books I was reading. I started to feel a difference after 2 weeks, and even a neighbor noticed. He calls me the neighbor with the spring in his step. People have noticed that I'm more grounded and at ease. Man, Fyfe, I have chills reading that. Like, I don't know about other people, but I'm just like, wow, blown away, because one, this guy is fairly young. You know, he's not 60 years old trying to reconcile a broken marriage, broken home, broken family because he didn't catch it early enough. He really was proactive of like, okay, this is not sustainable. It's not working. No one's getting the best of me. I think that that's the piece that I really, and even I felt starved of oxygen. It's just like, oh my gosh. Like, again, it gives me chills to hear that, because I think so many people are operating at that level in life, much less so their business. And it's, maybe they're not aware of it. And so I'd love to hear from you and your perspective. You know, when people are coming to you, you know, it's kind of like, are they even aware that they're starved of oxygen? It sounds like he was, but how many people are really operating under this level of stress and lack of presence, lack of really being able to operate at their peak potential, and they don't even realize it?
Yeah, a lot of them. So a lot of the people that when I first talk to them, they'll be talking about once they open up, because sometimes people aren't as forthright.
Right.
But once they open up, they'll be sharing stuff like overwhelm and just all the things that are on their plate. I'm like, yeah, it kind of sounds like you're a bit burnt out. And people are like, what? Like, really?
Wow.
And I think there's a lack of willingness to admit that that's there, because it means that they have to make some changes and they might not know how to make those changes. So I don't know if it's just like you're just in it so much, and I've been burnt out a couple of times, and when you're in it, it's really hard to see your way out of it and to even see it, because it's such a slow creep. But yeah, it's very common for people to not quite fully recognize the state that they're in early on anyways.
Well, I'm so grateful for the work you're doing. And you previously owned HVAC business yourself, correct? Yeah. So you've been in the trenches so much of the time, where when people are coming in as coaches, they actually haven't lived it and they don't really know what it's like. So I think that even just the fact that you've been through the ringer in so many ways to be able to speak from personal experience. And, you know, Fyfe, how did you actually make the transition to this field and the study? I mean, what you're certified in, you're a positive intelligence coach, which I had never heard of until now. So I'd love for you to kind of give us the backstory of the transition from HVAC owner to coach, specifically why you chose this vertical of coaching.
Yeah. So I'll rewind a little bit. My entrepreneurial journey started running a painting business, and up in Canada, there was College Pro Painters, which I think was in the States as well. Big franchise, got into that in my early 20s, and that kind of opened the door to what entrepreneurship was. It was never on my radar that was something that I wanted to do. So I kind of fell into that, and through that was just exposed to like leading a team, and like coaching painters, and met a lot of amazing people through that. And some of my best friends came out of that experience, other franchise owners. So I did that for a number of years and wanted to move on from that. And when I was planning to move on from that, I had no idea what the next step was going to be. And my dad was an executive coach, and chatted with business with stuff with him all the time. And he was the one that kind of nudged me. He was like, hey, you should look into this coaching stuff. Like, I think you might like it based on some of the stuff you've shared about your business. So I did an initial coach training through Coactive Coaching, and which was just like an executive coaching program. And it was one of those things where I was like, man, it feels like coming home. I was like, man, if I got paid to do this kind of thing, like that would be rad. And I was in my early mid 20s, and was like one of the few guys in the room, definitely one of the youngest people in the room.
Right.
But I decided to take a leap and was like, I'm just going to go through the training and see what happens. And did that. Was awesome. And then was slowly just kind of coaching on the side. And it's been about 10 years of doing that. But in the meantime, after that training, got into an HVAC cleaning business franchise with my business partner. And we had that for about 6 or 7 years.
Nice.
Worked as like a coach consultant in a company for a little bit. And then it's been about 4 years doing what I do now, full time.
Mm-hmm.
And after going through a period of burnout, I was exposed to positive intelligence. I had a friend that was a coach and said, hey, I'm going to do this program. I think you should check it out.
Okay.
Almost said no because I was burnt out. I was like, I don't want to take on anything else.
Right.
But did it. It had a big impact on me in a very short amount of time that helped me kind of get my head above water. And that's what kind of pushed me to take the leap to get certified there. So yeah, executive coaching, mental fitness with positive intelligence, and then background and some franchises and trades.
I love the background, and I like the diversity of it too. You know, the painting and the HVAC, because it just positions you to serve more people. Okay, so Fyfe, what you were talking about with the positive intelligence piece of that, can you really break that down and kind of dig in on like what are the core tenets there, and what specifically spoke to you at kind of that molecular level? Like, I loved how you said it felt like coming home, and that was before the positive intelligence side. You know, it was more regarding coaching. But I'm just wondering regarding positive intelligence, like why, if you can just kind of help us understand that more.
Yeah. So high level, I should maybe explain mental fitness briefly. Mental fitness is essentially your capacity to handle challenges with less stress. So with anything in life, we get thrown curveballs, challenges are thrown our way, and often we react when we're put under pressure in different ways. And that can create negative emotions, it creates stress, anxiety, all those types of things. But over time and through practice, you can cultivate your ability to handle those things with less stress and less anxiety. So it's kind of like going to the gym, where
Yes.
the first time you go to the gym and you try and lift a heavy weight, you just can't do it. But if you go long enough and you create a practice around it, you build enough muscle, and then you can lift that heavy weight. So it's the same kind of thing. And I think it's something that we don't think we can train for. Usually people think it's just exposure and just time in business, but there are practices and there are ways that you can actively and proactively cultivate that to be more resilient and to be more present and to be more, just less anxious and stressed.
Okay, so mental fitness in relation with the positive intelligence, is that kind of the manifestation of it, so to say, like a core ethos? Okay.
Yeah.
I love the mental fitness. It is in so many ways, you know, it's about training the mind, because otherwise we've been conditioned by someone, and we are continuously acting in accordance with programs of how we were taught to think and how to observe the world. And so often I've observed it's been in childhood. But what are some of those old programs that you've seen that are tied to, that you've had to effectively say, okay, let's work this out and then build up something new? So can you kind of take us through that process?
Yeah. So, I mean, like if anybody's listening, when you think of yourself being really challenged, we're usually put under pressure in some kind of way. And where do you go when you go under pressure? For me, I'm under pressure, I go to people pleasing. That's kind of my default mode. Um, I become more of like a stickler perfectionist. So like wanting to get things right, not wanting to screw things up. I want to make sure people are happy. Like those are the places that I go when I'm more and more under pressure. And through positive intelligence, they have a framework where there's kind of 9 archetypal ways that we or 9 kind of common patterns that we self-sabotage, or those patterns. Um, those were my common ones. A lot of the ones I see with entrepreneurs and business owners, um, just you become overly controlling, or
Can
you
you
become.
go through those 9?
Yeah, I can probably remember them off the top of my head.
Do it.
So one is the controller, which is there's an anxiety-based need to have control over situations. And I should state before I even go through all these, all of the things I'm about to share sit on a strength that we have naturally, but we just overuse it and it becomes our biggest kind of Achilles heel. Um,
So good.
so especially for business owners, that controller thing where you you have a team, and instead of like just empowering them to do something, you like micromanage them. You want to control it. You want to get the result your way. So that's one way. Um, as I said, people pleaser. So that's a really common one. Um, they use the term the stickler for like that perfectionistic person. They want to get it just right, and they can't get things off the ground because they're just constantly trying to make it perfect. Um, hyperachiever. So you're so focused on results, you're constantly chasing things, and you can never relax and be present with what is. And for anybody listening, you may be kind of prioritizing which ones are better. So some people are like, "Oh, the hyperachiever, that one's better than the controller." They're all bad. Like they're all equally negative. So hyperachiever, there's the hypervigilant. It's not somebody that's just constantly worrying about what might happen. They're super vigilant with everything. They're the one double checking everything, and they're just kind of anxious, um, always fearful, and always like over planning, probably. Hyper rational, which is like overly logical and analytical to the point where it's counterproductive, or like they have friction in their relationships because they can't relate or connect on a
Yes.
different level for people that
So
are
too.
more emotional.
Yeah.
Um, which ones am I missing? Like I've got most of them, and then there's the restless. So that's like the that distracted person. They're constantly jumping to the next thing. They don't finish projects. They can't focus and sit through stuff. They're starting new things all the time,
Yeah.
and never seeing things through. And the victim. So
The
just
victim. Ooh.
playing the victim with where they're at in life and kind of externalizing everything as their main issue. And I think that's one that, again, when people hear it, they're like, "Oh, I'm not the victim. Like that's the bad one. Like the hyperachiever is the good one." But again, they're all equally bad, and I think we all have a bit more victim than we're willing to admit.
Mhm. So good. Okay, so this is what I've got down. You tell me what I'm missing. So, 1 controller.
Yeah.
This is, really anxiety based. 2 is a stickler, the perfectionist, can't get things off the ground. 3rd is the hyperachiever, so focused on getting results. You're constantly chasing, can't sit with what is. Next is hyper fearful, overly planning.
Vigilant.
Vigilant. I was like, I missed that one.
Yeah.
Okay, vigilant. Great. Okay, and then we've got hyper rational, restless, and victim.
Yeah. How many are we at? 3, 4.
We've got 7. So we're missing 2, but honestly, this is enough to work with. So
Yeah.
I think we're good. For those of you who are just joining,
I got it. I got the other 2. Pleaser, which we talked about a little bit, and
it.
then avoider. So that's like the procrastinator, avoid conflict, don't want to get into stuff. I'll deal with it tomorrow. That kind of thing.
So for those of you who are just joining, we're talking about Fyfe has a tenure in doing mental fitness coaching, which I love that concept. And y'all, this conversation is so incredibly important because so often we have subconscious narratives, subconscious programs that were developed in childhood that were modeled for us that we're not even aware of. So he went through 9 of those kind of mentalities and effectively old programs that we need to intentionally move away from. But until we're aware of it, we cannot make a change. So these 9 are, just to go through quickly: avoider, pleaser, victim, the restless, hyper rational, hyper vigilant, hyperachiever, stickler, controller. And there is nothing that is better than the other, because every single one is equally damaging to you, your business, your loved ones. And I'd love Fyfe to just kind of lean into that a little bit. Like, how do you help folks identify which one they struggle with? What are questions that even those listening now could ask themselves to help kind of self-identify?
So the thing I do with clients is there's an assessment. It takes like 5 minutes. I'll send them the assessment. They answer the questions, and boom, you've got your prioritized rank of where you fit on this scale. So that's something I can share with you. You can share with listeners. But in terms of how to think through this, I mean, if for chatting business owners, there's definitely themes. Um, and I think people like they kind of know the way they get in their own way. You don't necessarily have to have the perfect, like, oh, it's the controller. It's like, oh, I'm a procrastinator. People kind of know that. Oh, I tend to say yes to people and get resentful after because um I overreach and help too much. So I think there's like a natural tendency that people have a sense of. I think where this gets helpful is as you get clearer on each one, and each one has a deeper description of how this shows up, the impacts that this has, you start to actually see how negatively impactful this can be in real time. Um, and I could kind of talk about it. I'm wondering if it might make more sense for me just to talk about mine, or like see what's showing up for you to kind of have a more real time
Hmm.
conversation about it, because
Yeah.
otherwise we're kind of talking about it and we can kind of, I don't know how it would land if we just listed the definitions more or like had more
Yeah.
questions.
Well, honestly, let's do real time.
Cool.
I'm your subject.
Yeah.
I'll share where I'm weak. There were things that very much so resonated. To be honest with you, I can see myself in every single one.
Which one do you feel like right now creates the most negative impact?
You know, I love that. I love that you said right now, because I just left a message the other day for my darling. I was like, I just see us ebbing and flowing through. It's like this season is really dedicated to growing in this one way. And then we kind of move out of it and then we really focus on another. So it's like rarely is there ever a season where we're not needing to grow in some way. But also, if we're growing out of that situation, and maybe even that self-sabotage area, until we need to get to the next level in that area in particular. So I feel like it's almost like it's never linear, but it is kind of like taking stairs up in the growth.
Mhm.
Right now, I would actually probably say stickler is always something that I wrestle with. So I think actually right now, because I just actually was sitting and going through the big 3 things that I need to do over the next 30 days. And I'm like, I think actually for a lot of them, they'd be not as big of a thing as they are in my mind if it wasn't that they need to be perfect.
Hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I can read the description of the stickler a little bit more because we're working with something in real time.
Yeah.
Um, so perfectionism and a need for order and organization too far. It's like the general description. Um, yeah, some thoughts, like if anybody's listening and you kind of resonate with this, right is right, wrong is wrong. I know the right way. If you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all. Others have too lax standards. I need to be more organized and methodical than others so things actually get done. Can be the thoughts that somebody like this has. Um, there's often like a lot of frustration and disappointment with yourself or with others when you don't actually meet the standards that you have, and it can create some anxiety of like, got to get it right, like have the right system. I know for me personally, like what's my goal setting system that I'm going to use this quarter, and I got to make sure that's just right, and like, and then I kind of don't really do it because I'm trying to get the right system instead of just having a system.
Yeah.
and, and like,
Right.
and for people in the trades, a lot of business owners in the trades start on the tools. They are the technician. They know the trade really, really well. And that perfectionism and that sticklerness is a really important strength when it's used correctly to make sure jobs are done properly and
Mhm.
things don't go wrong. But where that can be tough is as you're starting to elevate yourself in the business and you have people doing the work for you, are you being too hard, and are you like micromanaging and in there so much that you can't let go?
Mm,
And when you have somebody else doing the work, they like the expectation that they can do 80% as good as you
right.
should be enough for you to back off, because if you're focused so heavily as a technician owner, you're
Mm,
not building the business and focusing on the things that will really drive the growth and what you actually want, probably.
yeah.
So we kind of put a ceiling on what's possible by being so
Hands on.
perfectionistic with certain things. So I just
That's
like,
so good.
yeah. Um,
Hmm.
and it just creates some rigidity. Like change is harder when you're trying to have things just be perfect and get it right the first time. You don't have
Yes.
that same flow of trying something new, adopting a new system, and just like seeing it through. So there's strengths associated with each of these, but we just take it too far, and then that becomes the thing that gets in the way of the thing we actually want. Um, and like, I think of the perfectionist thing or the stickler, and I'm like, man, how many projects are not getting across the line because we're just trying to get it just right.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so whatever that's bottleneck is in the business, usually there's some kind of self-sabotaging behavior associated with it from an owner standpoint, or the team standpoint too.
I'd love to hear your thoughts. One, I want to call out what you said at the very beginning when you were talking about these self-sabotaging mindsets and the ways that they manifest. Because one, I know all of us have one of these. And I love that you said usually it's almost like the shadow of a really strong strength or strong strength
Hmm.
of a strength that we have.
Hmm.
And Fife, that's where, man, there's like so much compassion that can come in as we're kind of assessing this and analyzing it. It's like, actually, it's my greatest superpower and also my greatest weakness. It's just the other side of the coin, or rather, the degree of the shadow that's cast is usually the degree of and strength of the light. And so I'm curious, how you help us uncover what is the root issue, because if we want to see real change, we so often need to go to the actual genesis of it. So, what's your process to do that?
Um, it's a great question. I think there's a couple different angles that I take with people. And one is to start like we kind of just did in looking at, hey, here's a quick assessment. Let's shortcut our way to looking at how you might get in your own way. And then once we have, like, let's say it's the stickler, let's say it's the avoider or the top two, we can look in the business and say, okay, how are these showing up and getting in the way of results in the business? Oh, I'm avoiding having this conversation with that department leader because I don't want to have this hard conversation. So I'm not addressing this issue, which means it's just going to continue. Um, maybe it's that restless side as a business owner. You're constantly starting new projects, but never seeing a priority through to the end each quarter. So it kind of becomes a bit of a map to say, okay, here are the top couple ways I might be getting my own way. Where do I see that showing up with myself and my team and in the company? Um, and then you can kind of do the reverse too. You can look at what are the bottlenecks I'm seeing in the business. We're not growing in this area, or there's friction around this one team member, or we're really lacking on the operations side with these three teams.
Right.
What's going on there? What's at the heart of that? And it might be a conversation that's not happening. It's like,
Mm.
oh, that might be tied to the avoider. So like it kind of there's like a two-way street with
It's-
it where it's like
yeah.
you can kind of get there both ways. But usually there's a manifestation of it somewhere in the business that's bottlenecking things in terms of growth of people or growth of revenue or whatever.
Fife, what you're saying, it's like, man, we need this at an organizational level. It's not just us as the leader understanding our own self-sabotaging behavior, but it's also us helping our team understand theirs. Because to your point, brilliant analogy and example for the avoider, and to that point, and someone brought up the Enneagram. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but there's 9 personality types, and the ninth, the avoider, it made me think of the ninth, Enneagram type, which is the peacemaker.
Yeah.
Maybe, it has a similar light. The light is, man, they're just so peace oriented and looking to have harmony and unity in the group. And we need these people. And perhaps they have a tendency to avoid, and thus things kind of slip through the cracks because they're not willing to have those hard conversations. And then all of a sudden one day they up and quit. And all of a sudden you're like, what? I never even had a chance to, bring resolution because I had no idea. So I really, really love that. Really, it's perhaps even, to this point of an organizational exercise of, and you've got your assessments on the website, but I'm assuming you bring this in at a team level too, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've taken full teams through this. There are companies like their whole company will go through some programming and go through the assessments. And it just levels the playing field when everybody can put their cards on the table and be like, this is how I'm getting in the way of the team, and everybody else does it too. It's not, there's no blame and shame in it because everybody does it. But when you can actually see it, then you can actually start to address it. And what's funny is when you start to see them interacting with each other. So you have that person that tends to avoid things and avoid conflict. And then you have the person, and both the whole team's under pressure. And then the people that are super controlling step in and control everything. And these people back down even more. And then you have like these elements of each kind of impacting the other. But once you can actually see that and have a conversation about it, you can start to move through those challenges as a team a lot differently.
I'm curious. I'm curious your perspective. Have you found in working with the teams? Have you found that there's a difference in the way women versus men respond, specifically to, I guess, no, and this is where it's like, I guess we can't ever say, most women are the one way, most women are, the pleaser or the stickler. But I am curious as it pertains to responding towards positive versus kind of like a critique approach versus a positive driven approach. Have you seen any kind of similarities across genders or even, I'm sure cultural backgrounds have a big impact as well, but I'm curious about race first.
So is this like in terms of how receptive people are to seeing
Yeah,
how
like,
they get in their way,
is it
or
is it helpful for men versus women to effectively take the assessment in 2 different ways where it's like, man, I'm down on myself. I hate that I'm this way, or versus, man, this is also your greatest light. Like kind of being the, hey, I'm going to come in and speak the truth and deliver it kind of through constructive criticism versus I'm going to take this approach of really championing you, encouraging you. What have you found in terms of the way people kind of receive feedback around kind of looking in the mirror, but then also feedback amongst the team as you're helping them with understanding who they are and how to move forward? So it's probably a 2-pronged question.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've never really looked at it that way. I tend to work a lot with guys. So just there's like a natural tendency there. But I've never, and I think there's also a type of person that's willing to do this kind of thing. So there's some self-selection bias that happens, I think, because somebody who's super, super resistant will probably weasel their way out and just not engage in something like this. Whereas people that are willing to do this have a bit more of a growth mindset. They're willing to invest in themselves. They're looking for ways to get better and develop. So usually there's some kind of growth minded aspect that each person brings. And at the same time, it can be confronting to be like, oh, like this is the pattern that I'm in, and I'm creating the results that I say that I don't want. And there's actually a 10th way we self-sabotage that I didn't talk about because sometimes it can take us off. But that's kind of the master one, which is how we judge ourselves and others. And that's the voice of the internal critic for people that use that language. But it's that voice in our head of like, this is bad, this is wrong. And you start judging yourself and beating yourself up, or you start judging somebody else that they should be better, whatever that is. But that's a voice that shows up. Um, and that can be really loud when people are starting to looking in the mirror to be like, oh, I don't actually like some of the stuff that I'm seeing when I look a little bit closer. Um, and I think it's important, yeah, as you said, to have some compassion and grace for like, yeah,
Yes.
it's not perfect. I am imperfect. And how do I want to move forward now?
That's so good. I'm glad you brought that up. I've found that usually the things that make us most angry about other people are often the things that either we really hold a value to because we've gone through a personal experience and thus it's become something that we're really impassioned over, and or it's something we don't like about ourselves. It is so much that concept of everyone and everything is a mirror for us in the outer world. I was on the phone actually with my mom the other day, and she struggles when I'm not in the same city as her, and she's just the most wonderful, wonderful woman. And I told her, she was like, "Are we good? Like, is there anything you're having a hard time with me?" And I was like, "Honestly, no." And then I was like, "You know what? Yeah, that I had a moment the other day, and it was a mirror for me. It showed me that I actually wasn't good. So yeah, I did get annoyed the other day, and I moved through it quickly, and I'm good. But most of all, the second I get annoyed at something as silly as as something to do with mail, I was like, oh man, like I actually need to take a minute here because this reaction that I'm feeling towards something very minor that she did, no big deal really. Normally, I would be able to just be like, oh, no problem, or whatever the response might warrant. But in that moment, that was a mirror for me of, wow, okay, I'm actually really not doing that great. I probably need to take a minute, And so
Hmm.
the more that we can start having that mindset of what's going on in the external is a mirror for how I'm doing internally in so many ways. Even just, do I have the capacity and the grace to cover over whatever the other person is doing? That usually will be a sign and a reflection of the grace and compassion that we're affording ourselves, and then the judgment that we extend, likewise the judgment we turn inward.
Yeah. Yeah. Very powerful to just look at the world as a mirror, and like anything that frustrates us, it's like, what does that say about me? And
Yeah.
what am I not okay with?
Yes. What am I not okay with? I love that. Yeah, the standards that we hold, and then really understanding why. Fife, I'm curious, in terms of kind of moving forward. So we talked about how to identify the problem. How do you help them set new targets? Is there, a process that you help them go through? Is there a clear light for each one of these kind of, I guess you could say, shadows that, causes the self-sabotaging?
Yeah. So the question is like, okay, now that we see these, what happens next? And like, how do you grow through that? Is that what you're asking? Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not a once I see it, then it solves. It's very much a lifelong practice in a lot of ways, like physical fitness. Like I can do it and you can get a diagnosis for a health thing and you can see it and you can have the results in front of you, but until you actually start going to the gym, start eating better and do that consistently day after day, week after week, year after year, that's when you see the benefits of it. And that's where I really like this part of mental fitness is a lot of leadership development is insight based, where you do an assessment, you read a book, and you're like, aha, I see it. But then there's no like practice of it. Like, how do you actually develop that mental muscle of leadership? So I see mental fitness as a core practice and mental muscle for leadership. And there's kind of three core muscles associated with this. The first is how do you build up more command over your mind so you can direct your focus where you want it to go? Um, because a lot of the time we're just kind of in default reactions to what happens around us. So and a lot of that's kind of through forms of mindfulness and meditation, like the root forms of that. And as you build up that capacity to have more command over your mind, there's more awareness that happens, which increases emotional intelligence. But that command over your mind is a big part of it. And then as you're starting to see these saboteurs everywhere, you see them in yourself, but you see them in others, and that increases that emotional intelligence side of moving through life and work with a different tool set. And then there's, I won't get into all of them today, but there are, so I'm using the language saboteurs. And then the flip side of that is sage. It's kind of like the positive and negative sides of the brain. And this is all from the book Positive Intelligence and where I got trained. So that's where the language is coming from. And the first time I heard that, I was like, sage, that's a funny word. But essentially, it's the light to the dark. It's the Jedi to the Darth Vader, if you will.
Yeah.
And there are practices that you can do on a daily basis that allows you to step into those same challenges in a different way. So, to simplify, there's like building up your awareness and ability to command your mind, recognize how you're self-sabotaging, and then take a different action. And through the training I take clients through, there's kind of 5 or 6 actions that when you understand them, once you've recognized that you're in a situation, you can kind of step into a different tool or a different way of moving through that same challenge rather than the default pattern of what we
Yes.
would have done in the past.
So good.
And that might be trying to bring more curiosity, more empathy, more creativity. There's like different ways of tapping into those things, or just laser focused action. Like how do you just step into things? But there's kind of practices, but I guess they're mental practices that you build up, and over time they become more default. And I remember for myself, it feels like nothing's happening, kind of like going to the gym, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, like I could lift this weight. And
Yeah.
for me, that didn't feel like much was happening. And then I got a call from my manager that one of our super expensive Mercedes Sprinter vans with all of our equipment in it was on fire and just like burnt to a crisp.
Whoa.
And I had this moment of like, oh, that sucks. What are we going to do? Where in the past I would have been like hair on fire, like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like,
Yeah.
this is so bad for our business and our production and all this kind of stuff.
We're ruined. Yeah.
And it was like 20 minutes later, I was like, huh, that was weird. Like I didn't react like I would have in the past.
Yes.
And it was one of those signals for me of like, oh, this is working. Like I am shifting my reactions to things.
Yeah.
But it's not like I read this book and boom, I have this like massive breakthrough right away. It's kind of like this slow build. And then something happens. You're like, oh, wow, that was different.
Yeah. What a good example. I'm sorry that happened. but to your point about it, it's not, and I think that's the thing, Fyfe, and that's why I'm grateful to be chatting with you, because a lot of coaches, there is this kind of like, oh, it's the magic pill. It's like how to lose 50 pounds in 50 days. And you're like, that's not how it works. And so I just appreciate the attention to, honestly, it's the minutia. It's the detail. It's like the little hinge that you kind of need to pay attention to, but it does swing a big door, you know? And to your point about, it starts with being aware of effectively what's my reaction, recognizing what is my old pattern, how have I sabotaged this in the past. And just for reminder, it's the controller, the stickler, which is the perfectionist, hyperachiever, being so focused on the results, you're just always going. Hyper vigilant, you're overly planning. Hyper rational, overly logical. Restless, you're distracted, you're jumping to the next thing. The victim, the pleaser, and the avoider. And so it's really recognizing what's my pattern in this context, because we can have different, to your point about seasons for like when we self-sabotage. Yeah, like how do I traditionally self-sabotage in these areas? So being aware that I'm effectively being triggered, and then what's my pattern, recognizing that self-sabotaging habit. And then I love that you did say meditation and just really curiosity, asking why. So good. And I love that it takes time. And I think that that's where the compassion actually is really important. Like, I learned this self sabotaging behavior for a reason. And usually it was because it helped me and served me in some way in childhood or in maybe even previous work environments. Maybe that was actually what got me the promotion. And so just having a lot of compassion for why that's happening as we seek to change. I really,
Mhm.
really appreciate the work you're doing, because especially in the trades, there's just a lot of hard work going into it. Yet we forget why we're doing it, and we lose sight of our purpose in it. We're doing it for our family, but I mean, if we're not well, we come home and we just fight with our wife, and our kids don't like us, and we're doing it for them anyways, and yet we're
Yeah.
miserable. So
Well,
yeah,
it's
I
it's
appreciate
it's
it.
stressful work. Like it's a high pressure environment. There's a lot of stakes. There's a lot of different people involved with deadlines. Um, yeah, it's high pressure and it creates a lot of like a combustion chamber for things to go wrong. So being able to like manage yourself in a different way is a wicked tool to be able to use um, to like slow things down,
Mm,
problem solve, deal with issues, um, be
yeah,
less reactive. So again, it's one of those things that is exciting for me to see that a lot of people in the traditional trade space are like very tactical, like hard skills, but there's definitely a lean to be realizing that some of these soft skills have a
yes,
huge impact, and can be really, really helpful and productive. Like some of the, I think sometimes there's like a, oh, that's nice. Like
yeah.
there's a real ROI on this stuff if you lean into it for a team and for
Mhm.
yourself as an owner,
Yeah,
that sometimes we play down because it's not as tactical or as tangible as some other tools and systems out there. Um, but yeah, it can make a real difference.
so good. I'm glad you brought up the ROI side. It's not like we have a actual left brain and right brain, but to use the analogy, we're IQ and EQ in so many ways, and the EQ is so underdeveloped. And the more I've been working with different companies at that C-suite level, man, is leadership relational. And if we don't know how to do relationships, it's not just, we were talking about this earlier in the green room, it's not just that the work that we're doing here helps us move beyond business constraints and helps our teams get along better, but it does translate back into our families. It like changes every area of our life. That's why I loved the testimonial that I was looking at on your website, of even a neighbor noticed. It was like, yes, job site was changing environments. And to your point about ROI, it is so expensive to lose employees because you don't lead well. And it's an expensive thing to go and hire new ones. And so it's really, having the ability to manage from this place of awareness and intelligence, because it's an intelligence. We have to tap into and learn the tools. We've spent our whole lives cultivating the IQ, but we've spent hardly any time cultivating the EQ. So, Fife, thank you so much. I'm so
Hmm.
grateful for, I mean, before we even joined, I just felt, I felt it, because my dad, he's been in the trades his whole life and never once ever received any kind of care the way that you're caring for men in the trades. And so I'm just really grateful for what you do. And I know that you're changing lives. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was a great conversation. Y'all, thank you so much for joining. I really would recommend you just to go take the assessment. Fife, I want to direct them to the right place for the assessment. I mean, it's free, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, it's a free assessment. So where do they go?
Um, so you can go to positiveintelligence.com,
Okay,
and then there's a tab called saboteurs, and
okay,
there's a link to take the saboteur assessment.
awesome.
And it takes 4 to 5 minutes, and yeah, it gives you like a really detailed description of each.
Mm.
Um, highly recommend doing it with a spouse or a partner, like a business partner. You
Oh.
can put them on the table and be like, like I see some patterns here. I see what's going on. Um, and and don't just put it in the shelf or put it in the drawer. Like actually do something with it. You can always reach out to me if you're curious about what practices actually look like and things like that. But even just that one action of like taking a look at it, having a conversation about it with somebody on your team or in your family, that's an action that will kind of create some dividends as well.
So good. I thank you so much for your time, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time as we continue these conversations about really changing the way that we show up, so that we're not just honing in on our craft, what we do every day, but ultimately who we are and who we're called to be while doing so. So, Fyfe, thank you, my friend. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.